Hello, welcome to the Left Shew Politics podcast. My name is Jeremy Gruhlkey. I'm in Los Angeles, and I'll be your host for today's episode. We've got a full and interesting show today. So whoever you are, wherever you are, and whatever your political bent is, we're happy you've checked in to listen to us rant and pontificate about the state of American politics. You can always find more of our witty observations on Facebook at Left Shew Politics and via Twitter where it's just Left Shew Politic, no S because Twitter is stingy with character count. And you can listen on iTunes, Stitcher, and even YouTube if that's easier for you. Joining me today are my LSP partners. Of course, we've got the eponymous Rick Shew. How you doing today, Rick?
I'm coming down with this crazy sinus infection, but I'm going to power through. So I'm doing pretty good, man. And
you are in Dallas, so you're staying safe, right?
I am in actually Plano, 20 miles north of Dallas. I want to make sure that's clear because I think Michael will make sure that distinction is clear himself.
Yeah, you're not in Dallas.
Not in Dallas. And that's our compatriot.
It's like I'm in Sherman Oaks and I'm saying I'm in West Hollywood. You know what I mean?
Right. It's all Los Angeles, though. So as far as I'm concerned, you're in Dallas.
There you go. Thank you.
All right. So you can hear our compatriot there, Michael Malloy. What's going on, brother?
Good morning. Not much.
Not much. Right. Okay. We also have a very special guest today. He's a buddy and fellow political junkie of mine here in LA, but he's also an actor with a growing list of credits, including a starring role in Love Is All You Need about bullying on a college campus, which led to being a vocal and active participant in anti-bullying campaigns, as well as an occasional political writer. And throughout 2016, he was an active surrogate for the Hilary Clinton campaign. His name is Blake Cooper Griffin. Welcome to the show, Blake.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
No problem. We appreciate you joining us.
The world's great right now, you know?
The world's great right now. You're loving the Trump administration almost as much as the rest of us, aren't you?
I mean, more tequila.
Yeah, especially having been such an active participant in the Hillary Clinton campaign. I remember during 2016, they actually had you flying all over the country doing events. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, I mean, it was truly one of the most humbling and greatest experiences of my life. I supported Hillary back in 2008. That was really one of the first elections I could be really involved in. And I had just moved to Los Angeles. And, I told myself that if she ever ran again, I would do whatever I could to make sure that she was president. And although that didn't happen, I got to go to tons of battleground states. I was there in Iowa when she squeaked by and won the caucus there, and then, gave speeches in some of the battleground states and held rallies. And I started helped start a chapter of Millennials for Hillary out here. And it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And looking back, I can say, I have no regrets and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. For me, I really think that, Hillary is perhaps the most inspirational politician that I've ever come into contact with.
Blake, it's Rick here. How are you, sir?
Hey, Rick.
Hey, I was just going to say I worked as a delegate during her primary in 2008. And so I was kind of alone on an island back then because Michael and I are very close friends, and he was for Obama from the word go.
I was so pissed at you.
Yeah, and I was not. I was for her, and I wouldn't take any of that back. I didn't work anywhere near the intensity that you did or the involvement that you had. But I was, I played a small part back in those days, even. And it's unfortunate that we're not calling her Madam President today, but
it really is. And the thing that when I sort of look back at this, and you look at the story of it, you sort of think the most qualified person that ever ran for president ever lost to the most unqualified person that ever ran for president.
The worst possible scenario.
It is the worst possible scenario. And, I know we'll probably get into this later, but, if there is any doubt that sexism exists, just that piece of information alone, that the most qualified person that ever ran for president lost to the most unqualified. So, I find her wildly inspirational, and have always been a fan of hers, and just, really have believed in her. So like I said, going to rallies and all that and giving speeches and was not difficult. And it's not difficult now because my belief is pretty firm.
Well, we're definitely glad that you are going to be bringing that perspective and experience from the campaign, because we've got a lot to talk about the Democrats and campaigns and what we need to do moving forward, and especially some of the things with Hillary Clinton. I wanted to ask you too about the anti-bullying campaigns that you're a part of. What What are those about, and how can people be involved?
Yep. So I did this movie, Love Is All You Need, which has just gone to iTunes. So please feel free to go to iTunes and buy it. But we were in theaters earlier this year, and it's a story that takes place on a college campus. It's based on, well, I wouldn't say based. It's inspired by true events of bullying, like the killing of Matthew Shepard and Tyler Clemente. And I actually play the bully in the film. That was, it was a really interesting character to get into, and the subject matter was particularly dark at times, but truly after the movie was shot, I realized what an important story we were telling, and really upped my involvement in anti-bullying efforts, because we did a speaking tour with the film, and I got to know the stories of a lot of people who have been truly savagely bullied, and I think that we need to talk about that. And just so happened that as this was happening, Donald Trump was running for president, and he is right now what is the biggest symbol of a bully, and was during the campaign. So, I worked with NPR and did a listening and created this listening kit about bullying, and you can check that out. It was Generation Listen. They came to my house and we did a hour-long discussion, and then came up with a kit designed at exploring the origins of bullying and talking about bullying in larger culture, but also how people can stand up for themselves, fight back against bullying, because 3 million kids every year are bullied, and 160,000 kids are staying home from school today because they've been bullied so badly. So I've worked with organizations like Buddha Bullying here in Los Angeles, and other organizations I've kind of worked with, and it's been a really humbling and fulfilling thing to do. So I encourage everybody to check those things out online, and check the movie out and share it with somebody, and most of all, be an advocate for people who are being bullied. When somebody says something that really affects change, if somebody stands up for another person or is an advocate for that person, that affects change. So thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah, no problem. I think it's an amazing thing that you do, and I think it's something that's not just important today, but it's going to be important moving forward, especially as social media changes and the lives of people.
Well, and kids are listening. I mean, Donald Trump has the ears of a generation of children. And we can think that, we don't think that. I doubt any of us think that. But, we can dismiss it. People can dismiss it. But it has an impact. I think we already are seeing those, the impact of that. And perhaps that's for another day. But, a generation of kids are listening. And that is why I feel so strongly about people like Hilary Clinton, who are, devoted to being competent and also being classy and graceful and compassionate. So it's with that sort of spirit that I hope that the Democrats will move forward, that we have a responsibility also to the dignity of our nation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, the Democrats need to figure out how to be the adults in the room. And we could spend, we can, and we have spent many episodes, the full hour, more or less just bashing Donald Trump. There's plenty of negative to say about him. But actually, for our listeners, we have a completely different premise for today's show. We want to sort of turn the camera around and look at the left side of the spectrum and figure out where the shortcomings are, what's wrong with the strategy that the Democratic Party and that the progressives are using, and what we can do better from our end to both set a better example and to have a better strategy for combating what's happening from the right and what the GOP is doing. So I want to sort of jump right into the roundtable discussion and get onto those topics. And Blake, I'm actually going to give you the first opportunity here. And it's a question that people have been asking pundits and everybody that you see being interviewed on TV. You'll have the host and they come to them and they say, who is the leader of the Democratic Party right now? And they're not getting a lot of great answers. So I'd like to sort of talk about that for a minute. So Blake, who do you think the leader of the Democratic Party is, or who should it be?
Mm-hmm. Well, I wish I had a clear-cut answer for you, but, I do think it's up for debate. I think that a lot of whoever the leader, a person believes the leader to be, has a lot to do with the way they felt about the last election, and even as Democrats, there's, an amazing array of feelings about the last election. I mean, I think Obama would kind of feel like the default leader because we sort of are looking back at him, and I loved him so much as he was president, but it's impossible to not even love him 20,000 times more now that we have, President Loco in the White House. So I think that a lot of people probably see him as the leader, as they should, but because he can't run again, he's not really able to, there's a void there. So, and I think that a lot of the farther left, or perhaps some people who are not Democrats or maybe just got involved in politics, really see Bernie Sanders as their leader. And then there are people like me who want to see Hillary Clinton out there more and want to hear from her and look to her for, leadership. So, there are people like Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, those people. But I think, to me, I see the leader right now is, being different based on how you felt about the last election.
Right. I think that's probably pretty true. Does anybody have a more clear answer to that, Malloy?
I think the fact that we don't know who the leader is means there is no leader of the Democratic Party. It just kind of feels, I don't even know what the message of the Democratic Party is. And, obviously there's different factions. You do have the more Bernie wing, I think the more a little bit closer to the center with Hillary Clinton. But who's the voice? I really don't know. I don't even know what to follow. And I'm a political junkie, and I don't even know what the Democrats' message is right now. And I think that's what's screwing things up. I read an article the other day.
Not to interrupt you, I just want to say this, nor do they. But go ahead.
Yeah, but this thing about Joe Kennedy, you know what? I love this kid, right? I think he's got a great voice. He's saying some smart things. He's talking about policy. He's talking about social justice. And, I think the Democrats are kind of getting like all up in a tizzy, like, oh my God, Joe Kennedy, maybe he should be the next one to run for president. And it makes me think to myself, what in the world is going on that, yeah, I agree. I really like what he's saying, but you're acting as if you don't have really smart progressive voices everywhere. I think it's just that the party's grown a little bit tired. You have a lot of people who've been in Congress, who've been in the Senate, who've been all different layers of government, and they're missing out. They do not know what the message is. They do not know how to sell progressivism anymore. And I just think it concerns me that they get so fired up about just one guy, like, oh my God, I can't believe he can actually talk in good terms and communicate with the people. Like that, if that's not a real big indicator of how far down the Democratic Party is, I don't know.
We've never been good at communicating the message. But Rick?
I was talking to a friend the other day about this, and I said, we're talking so much now about the Democratic Party, and there's not a leader and there's no message. There's no cohesive message. And I started really to think about it. I said, there really hasn't been since 2009, 2010. Yes, Obama himself is a transformational figure, and he elevated himself above this topic. But at the end of the day, this party had him. And here's a couple of good examples. You look at the midterms in 2010, it was like historic wipeout. Okay, the Republicans just ran over the Democrats, and they started taking over the governor mansions. I mean, it was widespread, and it's been that way ever since. Yet Obama prevailed himself, was able to win the popular vote both elections, and a pretty sweeping electoral college victory as well. But the moment he left, and that void needed to be filled, it really sort of showcased that there isn't a Democratic Party. There isn't really a message. It was about Obama, this transformational figure, but he's gone. He's retired. And yeah, he can have a voice, but he has to tread lightly because he's also a statesman, and he can't really, ex-presidents interfering too much with what current presidents are doing is not the norm, although he did come out against the DACA thing, and we can talk more about that later. So that was cool, but there's just not a lot he can do at the moment. So where does the Democratic Party stand right now today? And my honest answer is I have no idea. And every time I see a Democrat, I don't care who it is, and they come on TV, because it's all in their head now. They know that the narrative against them is that they do not have a message. And so when they come on a show, and I don't care if it's Anderson Cooper or Chris Hayes or whoever, and they're asked, so what is the Democratic message? And they start to talk, I cringe. I'm like, oh my God, I could literally do a better job than that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I literally could do a better job.
I think the problem is that, I agree with everything that everybody said, and I don't know who the leader of the Democratic Party is right now, but I mentioned that progressives have always been really bad at communicating the message. And I think that part of the reason for that is that progressivism is so idealistic and so nuanced and so forward thinking, that it's a message that is somewhat hard to communicate in really concise, immediate terms. Like, it's not a talking point sort of message. And when you look at conservatism and the way that the GOP sells their platform, it's like these visceral terms about freedom and liberty and, the individual and less taxes, and all of that stuff is very easy to cling on to. And I think people get excited about someone like Joe Kennedy because in some ways he's able to communicate that progressive message in a way that seems impactful. It sort of touches people.
Yeah, but he speaks like we do. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I'm saying. It's not. I just don't. I agree that he's good at it. I just don't think that it's this amazing gift that I can't believe he's able to connect like that.
I don't either, but I think
it's just everyone else is missing the point.
I think also, though, some of it's, a reaction. I mean, I think that, first of all, I come at this a little bit differently in that I don't know that I think it's normal that we're not sure who the leader is right now. I think that we suffered an amazing defeat. And I think that in a way, this is the auditioning period where people are trying to figure out who the leader is going to be. To your point, though, I think that with Joe Kennedy, someone like that, so much of it is a reaction to where we are now. And so much of it is looked through the lens of, and was during the campaign in the media, looked through the lens of Donald Trump and, this sort of plain talk. So any way that we see people trying to get close to that, I'm certainly not making a comparison of Joe Kennedy and Donald Trump, but I'm talking about communication. We're getting excited about people who are able to be more visceral, and that may be part of what we see as part of this auditioning process.
I think that's exactly right. Right. So we want straight talkers. I think everyone's just a little exhausted with political speak. And I think that was a problem with Hillary, is that she had been, and understandably, she had been under attack for so long, and she had to be so guarded with everything that she said, but she spoke exactly like a politician, which everyone's pretty fed up, feels like they're getting lip service. So if you can have somebody that can kind of cut through all the bullshit and just kind of get to the main crux of the argument, that's really refreshing. And I just want more liberal voices to do.
So Michael mentioned it a little bit earlier about what is the message of the party. Does anybody have a clear answer for what that message is or what it should be?
Well, it's single payer, Jeremy. That's the flavor. Yeah, that's the flavor of the week.
Right.
People are now talking about single payer.
But that's not a message. That's an issue.
I'm being sarcastic.
I get you're being sarcastic, but the point is that that's an issue. We want to talk, progressives and Democrats and the left. We want to talk in these high-minded terms about actual issues. Whereas what we're combating is an entire generation of people, and even not just like the current younger generation, but everybody's sort of transformed into this, where we're getting things in tiny sound bites and in memes. And if it can't be communicated in a meme, they don't digest it, they don't process it. And
they at least have to try. Isn't that what the problem is? That I agree with you, but they're not even trying.
Well, part of the problem is that the Republican Party, especially the modern day Republican Party, all they do is talk to white people. They talk to white people that are 40 and over. Now, they might have little sprinkles of things here and there about immigration or we love African Americans or whatever. And I'm not accusing Republicans of being racist. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But it is true from just a messaging standpoint, and where the Democratic Party, rightfully so, is trying to be kind of everything to everybody in a sense. Like we want to reach out to the millennials, the Hispanics, the everybody. And that's great, as you should. You should reach out to all
message, though.
Yeah, you should reach out to all Americans. The problem is that when people talk about identity politics, I think 99% of the time that's mentioned is a cop-out BS thing of us actually being appalled by racist stuff. But every once in a while, that point is actually valid. And the Democrats do.
I think the point is totally valid.
Yeah, the Democrats do that. And they have a message for like, this section of people and this person over here and that person over there. And then you listen to Trump, as full of shit as he was on the campaign trail, pardon my cursing there, but I can't think of another way to phrase it. At least when he talked about jobs or whatever, it was nonsense, but it was simple. And it was just it was a message.
All he said was jobs, though. That's
Well, yeah. He just, I mean, I think, one thing that I think
But he didn't just say more jobs, though. Let's not forget he won the election. There's a reason he did, but we'll talk more about that. I'm sorry, Blake, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, I think that the Democrats, I think two things come to mind. I mean, one is that I think our overall message that kind of are in our guts, which I actually think is pretty awesome, which is that we are the party that stands for opportunity for all, whether that means, economically or socially. As Jeremy was saying, I think that we have struggled to communicate that effectively in the past. I mean, even with some of the, I think that we should even do like down to the rebrand of some of the graphics of the Democratic Party just to sort of symbolize, a change, that we are shifting. But I think that that's one thing that there has not been an articulation of that opportunity for all message and using that to, feed into the smaller issues that directly affect people's lives. But I also think that it's on the Democrats too. We will have to mature as voters as well. And I'm speaking, to my millennial generation. I think that there is an element of so many different factions within the Democratic Party, which could work for us. We're Democrats. I think that as progressives, we should anticipate that we're going to argue over issues. But I think that there is a certain purism or purity test that's been being applied out in certain ways that is dividing us and making it hard to make a message that everyone can glom onto. I do think that's why it sounds sometimes like, people go on TV and it sounds like they're trying to appeal to everyone because they're so afraid that one end of the party could hold up the other end. And I think that some of that's going to hopefully be taken care of by this last election to see that, hey, the worst can happen. It did happen.
Yeah, I think that a lot of that is right. And I think one of the problems we have in communicating a message is that we have such a hard time combating the perception that the GOP tries to cast of the left. They try to create this idea of what the left is. And so one of the questions I have is, what does the right-leaning voter think that the left stands for? And how do we change that perception? Rick and Michael both mentioned the identity politics, which is frequently used as a pejorative against the left. And sometimes it's definitely used as pejorative. Sometimes it's valid, sometimes it's not. But how do we combat that message? How do we change the minds and hearts of people who are that slightly right-leaning voter that has a negative impression of what the left does stand for?
I think they need to. I don't even hear anybody even combating the message of the right. The right makes these preposterous claims, particularly like economic claims, and they run just generically against this boogeyman called liberalism. I don't understand why the liberals, the progressives, don't start attacking conservative economics. They're not mentioning all these important things about what they do and how they've destroyed the middle class. They talk in these I think they almost talk in too high of a level rather than breaking it down. Look what happened when, I don't think any conservatives, literally, I don't think I've had a conversation with a conservative who even knows about the change in the wealth distribution. That is off their radar. They don't even know it exists. And that's a huge winning thing for working class people. But nobody seemed to be able to get it out there, but maybe Robert Reich, but he's not big enough.
Not in their bubble, for sure.
Well, also, I do think that Democrats do try to limit their arguments by fact, where, I think Republicans have Fox News to not limit. They're dealing sometimes in made up spins on things. But where I really agree is we need to fight back against that harder. And I really, really agree with the idea that the economic message, we need to call it out. The idea about Obamacare, there were things that need to be fixed. But one of the things I was giving a speech on with an organization called Save My Care. And one of the things that really struck me is that ultimately, if we can get Obamacare in a really workable place, which it already is in a workable place, but if we fix some things, this is economically sound. This is economically good for the U.S. economy. And, talking about taxpayers, talking about how, if someone goes to the emergency room, and thank God we live in a country that doesn't turn people away and has them die on the street. When someone goes to the emergency room and they can't pay for their services, ultimately that's passed on to the taxpayer. So in a way, by offering healthcare for all, we're offering a more sound economic policy as well. I do think those things need to be broken down for people.
You said something about, the Democrats tend to limit their arguments to facts, which is very true. We love to talk about facts. I mean, you said it and then talked about how we needed to not do it. And then you went into a bunch of facts about Obamacare, which is a problem. I mean, those facts need to be out there. We need to be able to communicate those to people. But if people aren't going to hear them, then it's worthless. And the problem is that the GOP, they base their arguments on faith. And I don't mean like religious faith, but they have a genuine and abiding deep faith in their ideology. And it's communicated in very simple terms. It's a faith in the individual. It's a faith in my work, my reward. It's a faith in holding on to my money and lower taxes, and the government is bad. And all of those things are very easy to communicate. And, I keep using the word visceral, but it touches on a faith and an idea that these people have. And if you have faith in that idea, no amount of facts can permeate it. I mean, I'm sure we've all had discussions online where we tried to hammer people over and over and over again with facts about Obamacare or climate change or trickle-down economics. And it doesn't matter how many facts you present, it doesn't permeate that faith. And what Democrats and the left need to do is to figure out a way to generate more faith in their ideology. And that's not going to come by just drowning people in facts.
It's what I've said before, and I'll say it again. I don't know why they're not picking up on it. It seems as though the progressives, the liberals, are focusing too much on the ethics and the morality of the issues. I am not saying that's not germane, but that is not what moves.
But that's what the GOP is doing as well. Their ethics and morality is just different. Their ethics and morality are centered on.
No, but they're still making a compelling argument the other way. Like if Americans were just naturally ethical or moral, Donald Trump would not be the president of the United States. People vote in their own self-interest, even if they're wrong, right? When you're selling something, you have to sell it in a way of explaining to them this is how it benefits you. Right? Because people say nice things like they care about Latinos or they care about social justice issues. Not really. They care about things close to them in their sphere. And the way to move the masses is you have to convince those people that it's about your self-interest.
Right, but to Rick's point earlier,
economics is not your self-interest. It doesn't benefit you.
Right, but to Rick's point earlier,
all the country's money is going to stop.
But to Rick's point, the Democrats are trying to communicate to 14 different demographics, and it's hard for them to communicate a message about what's good for immigration. What's good for immigration is what's good for the Hispanic community. It's hard to communicate to the white working class out of a job steel worker in Pennsylvania that what's good for immigration is also what's good for them.
The Democrats have also lost that too. Let me ask you this. I think the message almost sometimes bothers me from the Democrats because it does kind of feel that they want a full-on open border without any laws. They don't do anything to push back a little bit to say, all these humanitarian issues, by the way, this benefits us economically, but still, we recognize there are laws. We have to do things to be able to control immigration coming in. Just little slight nuances and adding that to the messaging. I'm not saying we just want full-on open border. That could resonate, but they completely miss it because all they do is they focus on the morality and the ethical side of it is, yes, all these poor people coming up here, we should help them. They don't talk about the rule of law. But I think that's a missed opportunity.
And the crazy part about that, I agree with half of what you're saying there. I think it's a little off base, but that's okay. You do have some good points. But let's look at the Obama administration. Well, I'm talking about specifically about Democrats and immigration. Let's look at the Obama administration. Let's look at what actually transpired while he was president in terms of immigration. It was actually quite atrocious. There were a record number of people, families being torn apart and being deported under him, way more than under Bush. Like, that doesn't even get talked about. I'm not saying that's a good thing. What I'm saying is that how is it that you juxtapose the reality of the situation while he was president with the talking points, and yet the talking points somehow like supersede the reality, as opposed to like just a middle ground on this? Like, yeah, this actually happened during the Obama years. Everybody thinks that don't like him or maybe that are fed up that switch parties in 2016, that everybody's just been for open borders. And it's nonsense. Like it's empirically untrue.
True, but it's something that they were able, that the right was able to sell. And we're talking
because they can message.
They are much better at messaging because their messages are simpler, and simpler is easier to communicate.
And their people, I mean, I will say this, and their voters will fall in line. I mean, ultimately that does make it easier to sell a message if going back to the ideology thing, people believe so much in the ideology that if you put Donald Trump, who does not, in many ways, has not represented the ideology for his entire life, they will vote for him. On the other side, I don't think that we, as a Democratic base, have that same point of view.
Average Republican voter would vote for SpongeBob SquarePants if he was on the GOP ticket.
I would rather have SpongeBob.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about how people vote and the last election especially, and what are the lessons that the Democratic Party and the DNC needed to learn from the last election, and did they actually learn those lessons? How are they showing that they did? Rick, do you want to start there?
Thank you for actually calling me on that first, as I was coming out of my skin on this one. Yes. So here's the way I look at it. It's twofold. There were lessons that needed to be learned, yes. At the same time, there are also things to be learned of what not to do. And I don't want a knee-jerk and, oh my God, we lost the white vote, we got to just cater to white people. And that's what they'll do, because that's their MO, is that they're not focused, and they start trying to target their message as opposed to just having a broad message, right? So I don't want that to happen either, because here's the reality of the situation. I am disgusted with the DNC right now. The only reason I don't loathe them as much as I loathe the Republican Party, because at least their leaders aren't trying to pass what I find to be just vile laws, whether it's a woman's right to choose or DACA or taxes or healthcare or the border wall or whatever. We can go down a long list of things. Just if I could do a policy list, obviously I'm going, okay, the Democratic Party are the good guys. But the reality is, as far as just them as individuals and as a party and the corruption and the nonsense, they're just as bad. So I'm fed up with them right now, and I'm particularly disgusted that we don't have a leader, and that if we don't watch it, this guy's going to be president for 8 years. Okay. Now, with that said, let's also keep in mind that Hilary Clinton did win this election by 3 million votes in terms of the popular vote. 3 million more people. She had 66 million votes. That's more votes than Obama had in 2012. Okay, the places that we lost that gave Trump the election were razor thin margins in counties and some of these swing states. Now that's significant, right? It's relevant. Obviously, he won. He's the president. That's the outcome matters. I'm telling you guys right now, he's at 35%. He could be at 35% in 2020 and still win this election. That can happen, and it might happen if the Democratic Party doesn't get their crap together and we don't get a voice and a leader. But that's just a rant that I could do for hours. But true, I'm almost done. Here's the deal: the lessons learned are this: you have to, first of all, you have to campaign in Ohio and Pennsylvania and Wyoming, and you have to go to these places. You have to talk to people. Don't forget about the white working class blue collar person in the Midwest. Don't forget about that person, but don't knee jerk and forget about the minorities, gay people, transgender, all these attacks that this vile man in office right now is doing to the aforementioned list I just presented. Talk to everybody and and talk to everybody together. Make it cohesive. If we can get Obama's 2004 speech, if we can bottle that and at the Democratic convention, and we're all red, white, and blue or whatever, we need that message. We need that person. And I just don't want them to go too far one way or the other. Just be smarter. Talk to everybody. Campaign in the right places. And maybe let's not have a candidate under FBI investigation. As much as I love her, maybe that was not the right idea. It is what it is.
The only candidate that was under FBI investigation on election day seemingly was the Donald Trump campaign. This is what I'll say. I think that as far as lessons learned, I think that there's two. One, I think, there are many, but one is that as a party, I believe in strong rules in the DNC. I believe in there being rules to the nominating process. I stand behind that. But I think the party needed to do a better job of communicating those rules from the beginning, getting them out there so that the voters that were just getting involved understood them. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think that purism could be the end of the progressive movement. I believe that what we saw with the splintering of Bernie Sanders supporters really, really hurt us. As you said, Hillary won by, 3 million votes in the popular vote, but those razor thin margins were killer for us. And so, it is hard to not have a visceral reaction to think that some people sat this out. And I think that part of that is, as a party, if we are going to, if we're going to be the party that is sort of opening our doors to independence, which is what we want to do, or people who are just getting involved, we're going to really need to explain the way we operate as a party and get it out there so that people don't feel cheated. And I really think that, when I take of like, what does the DNC need to take away from it? I think it's that. And I think that more broadly, the leaders of the, Democratic Party need to also understand that purism could be our end, because my definition of perfect is different from your definition of perfect, is different from Rick's definition. It's just everyone's definition of perfect is going to differ. And if we don't sort of like coalesce around someone, I think that you are absolutely right. We could have Donald Trump for 8 years. I absolutely think that is a possibility.
And let me ask you a question on that, and that's all very well said. And I appreciate you acknowledging that we could, because there's people even on this panel that don't even think he's going to finish out this term. And I'm like, I love you guys. I think you're crazy. We could have him for.
I hope that the Russia investigation could take a turn at any time. But I absolutely believe that there could be a million things that could happen. And a million things happened in the last election, and Donald Trump could absolutely be reelected as president.
He absolutely could. And I just want to go back real fast on something that I said at the end of my little heated rant there about the FBI investigation, and not to get off the rails on this, but I just want to ask you this directly. Here's the thing. Sure. I admire her probably as much as you do. I have for many years. Like I said, I worked for her in 2008. I really wanted her to be president. I wish she was. At the same time, we can't deny the fact that there was a lot of shady things going on. Now, whether or not they ultimately end up being something she could be convicted for or whatever, that's a conversation to be had, and it doesn't appear that there was, and I'm glad. I don't want to see her behind bars. That's horrible. But the fact of the matter is, everything in terms of the email and everything else, that was not something to just be dismissed. And 2 weeks before the election, for Comey to have to come out, or not even 2 weeks, and say essentially that the investigation is ongoing, and we found some things that it maybe Hilary Clinton wasn't under investigation per se, but there was an FBI investigation surrounding her actions. And so
it was an IT issue. It was a bullshit investigation. If you know anything about the root of that, it was bullshit.
Actually, hold on a minute. That's nonsense.
No, it is not.
Yes, it was.
Not a real
it absolutely, it absolutely was, because if she had, listen to me, hold on. If she had classified information on a private email server, that is a big deal, and that's worth investigating when they find out that she has. There was 33,000 emails deleted. Okay, and they weren't Old Navy junk mail. Okay,
I'm not saying that is not scandalous in itself, because on the other side of the coin, I would be pissed. Why did she delete those emails? I'm sure it was nothing but idle chit-chat with friends and things, but doing that created an air of suspicion. It gave them an opening.
Yeah, and that's exactly it, is that we gave ammunition that we didn't need to have. And that's what I'm saying, is that we need, whoever runs in 2020, can we just make sure that we're not talking about FBI investigations and whatnot?
I just want to say this. I think that I hear you. I think Hillary Clinton has said that the email private server was a mistake. I also think, though, that if we're going to get into it, I think that the facts of this case have been hashed out. And the facts of the case were that it was a decision that she should not have made. However, there were no laws broken. And not only that, I know that people, don't like to bring this up, but Colin Powell also used private email. Okay, and we can argue. We can argue the logistics of all of that. But my point is that if you even go back, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, all these people had private email like dealings or whatnot, and there is a different standard applied to Hillary Clinton. And I will say this, there was a different standard applied to Hillary Clinton also from within the Democratic Party. And I think that that is also what delivered you some of that narrative. I don't, clearly she would not go back and make the same choice that she did. But every candidate, at least in this election, had something come up, and I think that there is a different standard applied. And that is what you hear from, I know, a lot of Clinton people, is that there is a different standard applied to her. And I even think within the left, one of the things too, I have to say, I hope the DNC learned is defend your people. Defend your people. I cannot believe the stuff that I hear from within the Democratic Party about the last person that tried to save us from the apocalypse. Because when the facts were hashed out, Hillary Clinton did nothing wrong. Okay, she shouldn't have had an email server. I understand that, but when it was hashed out, there was never anything proven that she'd done illegally, and so I think we need to move past that. And I think that we also need to take from this that I think we need to defend our people.
Well, here's the thing: is that I'll defend people all day long, but at the end of the day, we lost this election, and we lost it to a. I will stand by this 100%. And since we've done our last show, whether it's Charlottesville, whether it's DACA, whether it's the pardoning of Sheriff Joe, I can't pronounce his last name properly, so I won't attempt it, or Pario or whatever. It is. Thank you. It is clear that Donald Trump is a racist. And he's a vile sexist. And that's what we elected. And that's what we have. We have a climate change denying vile sexist in the White House. We should not have lost that election. And it's okay to be angry about that. It's okay to be upset with Hillary about that, because there's a lot of things that she did wrong. And right now she's on this book tour and she's blaming everybody from Bernie to the media. And some of it is even true, but it's like, can you stop? And for the love of God, right now, we don't need that distraction. And that's frustrating. And I will always admire her. But I am not going to sit around and just pretend like everything was just hunky-dory and we just lost. She screwed up. She screwed up.
You shouldn't.
She screwed up.
You shouldn't sit around and pretend that everything is hunky-dory. I don't think that Hillary Clinton is sitting around thinking everything's hunky-dory.
No, she's not, but she's blaming everybody. And
no. But there's another excerpt. I realize that these excerpts of the book are going around the internet. I get that. These cherry-picked excerpts are going around the book. Let me read you another excerpt from the book. I would go back over my own shortcomings and mistakes we made. I take responsibility for all of them. You can blame the data, blame the message, blame anything you want, but I was the candidate. It was my campaign. Those were my decisions. Now, I'm not seeing that reposted. What I'm seeing is people wanting to continue to zero in on a narrative.
With all due respect, you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of people posting something that Trump says that's pro-immigrant and saying, see, he said this at a speech. No one ever talks about that. I'm like, that's like being in an abusive relationship. What difference does that make? Because that gets drowned out and superseded if other parts of the book, you are literally attacking Joe Biden, blaming the Bernie bros. And I'm sorry. I mean, I have a lot of respect for you.
He is being intellectually honest.
Is it the right time to do it?
That's the thing, is that
it's not the right time to do it.
That's the only thing that's wrong here is the timing. But she's not. I think she's right.
Well, and listen.
Here's the deal. Let me tell you why I think that it's right to do, and why I think that we need to do it now. We need to have the conversation now, because I do think that the future of the Democratic Party, we don't want to be having this conversation I think the worst time to do it is to be having it in 9 months from now. I think that we need to realize that purism could be the end of the progressive movement. And I think that is part of what, at least when I hear this, that's about. But
let me say, purism, I agree with you. But I don't, and that did drive me crazy from the Bernie camp. But I think our biggest problem is, I do feel that the Democratic Party's moved to the right. It's too corporate. I think that also kind of hurt Hillary Clinton. I didn't hear during the campaign too much talk about pushing out the big money. the big money. It's like the same donors that are going to the Republicans. And so I am concerned about their focus on economics.
This is the most progressive platform that was ever put forward by the Democratic Party, and it was laughed at by the far, far left. By the way, I don't even make the distinction between the far left, because I agree with a lot of the things that those same people believe in. But where I differ is understanding that this is a very large country. And I understand that we need Democrats in all 50 states. We need Democrats at all levels of government. And people are going to elect their government based out of what they see the needs in their communities to be. And the president has to be the president for all people.
Let me touch on that for just a second, because I agree with you 100%. It was the most progressive platform ever, and the Bernie bros and the people on the left were claiming it wasn't enough, and they were willing to throw all 98% of their ideas under the bus because they weren't
Russian propaganda.
It did impact it. But
let
me finish. They were willing to throw that whole 98% away because they weren't going to get the other 2% of absolutism that they really wanted, and that's a problem. We shouldn't have a point in the Democratic Party or on the left or within progressives where absolutism becomes the issue, because we had a whole bunch of people who weren't willing to vote for somebody who agreed with them on 98% of the issues and was presenting the most progressive platform.
Yeah, okay, so why was that, Jeremy? But I mean, like, there's a reason why people are feeling that way. People are so suspect is because Democrats have warmed up too much to their big money donors. They're the ones that control it.
We made that a requirement. There's no way.
Right. Then why is that not our number one issue? This is corrupting our system. We have to purge the cash.
Because,
get in there and do more grassroots like Bernie Sanders did. That wasn't the message.
One, the Supreme Court was one of the top 3 reasons that everybody on the right voted. So they're already winning that issue. And secondly, because even the people on the right believe that we shouldn't have the money in the politics, but some reason they have this cognitive dissonance where they're not willing to separate the fact that the people that they want to vote for their social ideas on their far right conservatism are also going to throw them under the bus on the economic ideas. And they keep voting for these people. And so there's no way we're going to win on that argument. So they already agree with us there. So we can't keep hammering it home because we're not going to win it.
You have to inspire the liberal base. You do not inspire the liberal base, you're going to have a continuation of this. You continue to cozy up and we begrudgingly vote for these more corporatist Democrats, it's going to be a continuation of it. So I'm not going to put, hey, they're all Dinos or whatever that is, but it is ruining us and nobody's talking about it. Know what else we're not talking about? The debt. Like, Democrats don't talk about the debt. We act like, who cares? It's going to continue to grow. They need to talk about the facts. We need to raise taxes, raise corporate taxes and taxes on the rich. And these things are not talked about at all. It's not.
I will say, I know because I was standing on the sidelines of those speeches, and I can tell you that the Hillary campaign was talking about raising taxes on the richest of Americans. And one other point I want to make, this sense of purism will not go away if we don't talk about it. We can be silent and say, oh, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. We don't want to, but it will not go away unless someone will talk about it, unless someone will push back and say, wait a minute, I am the last candidate that ran that tried to stop Donald Trump. I won the primary by almost 4 million votes, and I won the general election by almost 3 million votes. I have a story to tell, and this is how I see it. I think it's a valid and a worthy perspective to look at. And if we don't look at it, it's not going to just go away. There will be another candidate in 2020 who will not be quite liberal enough, even if they put forward a platform that's more progressive than even the last one. And Hillary's platform was the most progressive ever.
But she couldn't sell it.
Even if they sell it. The problem, though, is that
I agree with you.
We do need to be having the conversation. Right now, the conversation is messy, and it's naturally messy. It's organically messy. It's going to be messy. But the problem with it being messy is that the way Democrats are having the conversation doesn't match with the way the media actually works. The people on the right, the GOP, actually understand the media and how to manipulate it better than the people on the left. For all the talk of the liberal media, it actually is built and designed to deliver the Republican message much better than it is built or designed to deliver the progressive message. It just is. And for the Democratic Party to move forward, we need to do a better job of understanding the way the media works, understanding the way social media works, understand the way messages are delivered now, and understand the way messages are digested, because those are all very different things. And the Republican Party is playing by a new set of rules that the Democratic Party doesn't understand yet. And if there's one lesson that I learned from the last election, it's that the old rules are out the window, right? The old rules are gone. What are the new rules? I don't really know yet, but we need to figure that shit out or we're going to be fucked. All right.
It's you can't sound like, you just cannot continue to sound like we have in the past. It's not just the liberals. We need to appeal to more conservatives, even the few rational ones that watch Fox News. But it seems like that liberals are very afraid to go on Fox News, or if it's obviously it's a normal contributor, they're like liberal light and they're there to make bad arguments. But somebody needs to go into Fox News and need to go into the right wing bubble and already know what their arguments are and have an amazing message to counter it. Any of us could do that. Any of us could go on those shows and counter those messages, but the people they're putting on there are always just bad at it. And I'm not talking about just their contributors. I'm talking about the politicians too. They do not even know what the right's preaching.
But that's by design. And I hate to I hate to bring up someone who's no longer with us, but look at a person like Alan Combs, right? And during the years, it was Hannity and Combs. It was like the left and the right, and then you had this fire-breathing dragon, Sean Hannity, who makes me crazy, but he's good at what he does. And then you had Alan Holmes, who, rest his soul, was pretty lame. You have Juan Williams, pretty lame. You had...
See, you've seen both sides of the argument. There you go, conservative. Yeah. Now, which one do you choose?
And what about on the 5, the heavyset guy? He's no longer there, but what was his name? Old school Democrat, Blue Dog guy, whatever.
Oh, God, he was
Beckel.
So bad.
Beckel.
What's his name?
Beckel, is that it?
I haven't watched the 5.
Yeah. Whatever. Again, that's why they do that. They do that by design. They don't want to bring on. I mean, I'll give Sean Hannity credit, which is hard to do, but he will talk to anybody. I mean, he's brought Bill Maher on his show, and maybe more people need to go on his show because let me go back on. Let me turn it on you again. I agree with you. We've talked about that many times. Like it's the contributors are all patsies, right? They go in there and make horrible arguments so that the normal Fox News listener, watcher thinks they've heard both sides, right? I'm talking about even the occasional time when you get actual like people in office that go on their shows. Like Sean Hannity will do his whoever it is on Fox will make their normal right-wing arguments, and the guy on the other side does not have the right equipment to combat it. And it makes me think, do you not prepare for this? Did you not listen and have an idea about what his message is? Because he knows yours, because he's ready to immediately shoot it down. They're unprepared to handle it. It's like they don't even listen.
No, let's talk about that. Again, having the equipment to handle it. And we've talked about a lot of what's wrong and what needs to be better moving forward and how the message should be communicated or not communicated. But none of that really matters unless we can coalesce all of that into an actual winning candidate, right? So let's each go around and give me 3 names of who you think should be on the ticket in 2020. Who do we think the Democrats should be running, or who do we think is going to run? Blake, do you have any names?
I knew you were going to start with me first. Who do I think is going to run? I think that I really do think that Joe Biden may run. I think that Kamala Harris will run. I mean, I think like 30 people are going to run. I think that Kamala Harris, who I like a lot, is probably going to run. I think Cory Booker is probably going to run.
General election ticket. For the general election, who do you think? In your opinion, who would be the ideal candidate to present or even ticket to put on in the general election? Not just the primaries, because we all know like 60 people are going to run. It's going to be ugly. But who do you think would be best for us actually to put forward after the primaries and into the general election?
That's $1 million question. I think that someone like Kamala Harris would be great. And then I also do think about someone like Joe Biden, who could maybe remind us of the good times. And he does seem to have a certain ability to bring people around him. Whatever it is, though, I'm actually going to, whoever it is, I do think part of what their message will need to be is that we need someone that can appeal to Democrats in North Carolina, in Florida, in Virginia, and also excite the California and New York people. I believe that we have to try to bring everybody into the fold, and then maybe has a personality like maybe like Obama did, that Obama has, that also inspires people in a way that will excite the far left, so that
All right,
so
Lloyd,
that
what do
they
you
can
think?
be in the fold too.
I mean, it's so far out, right? I'm going to agree with Blake. I was thinking
That would be my idea. If I could pick one person to be president,
is
it
that
would
a
be Jerry
possibility?
Brown.
Yeah. I mean, like he's definitely fiery, and I think it'd stand up. Dark horse. I'd love to see Al Franken. I think he's really smart, and I think he can connect and he can stand up to Trump. Those are the two right now, or maybe it comes from a governor or something. I don't know.
Old.
Maybe it is
10
Jerry
years
Brown.
younger, I would be all about Jerry
hard.
Brown, but he's
We're years
too,
away.
he's too old.
Well, I mean, so is Donald
Jerry Brown
Trump,
is older
and the
than
country just elected him, sort of.
All right, Rick, where are you at, man? I know you're going to agree with Blake a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of, listen, I mean, I think all of these people, it's speculative. I mean, we can talk about Elizabeth Warren, we can talk about Bernie Sanders, we can talk about Cory Booker. There's a Gillibrand as well. She's sharp. But, at the end of the day, what has to happen is that Trump has to be stopped. And he is going to run again. Okay? Look, unless something does come up where that is impeachable, which it might through this Russia investigation, but it has to be pretty empirical sound evidence for that to happen. And I just, that might not necessarily exist in terms of what's tangible, but we'll see.
Can I say something on your comment right there real quick? I think here's another missed opportunity that I think that how the Democrats are not being strategic enough. This Russia thing, I mean, I want it. I'm happy. I want to stay focused on it up to a certain extent. But the problem is, let's just say, I mean, I think the smoking gun's already out there, but let's just say it all comes together. Mueller releases his case. They're ready to move it forward and then send it over to the Congress. Congress is so ridiculous. It's not even it's not even a good entity to be able to judge or to impeach someone. The Democrats, what they need to be doing right now in the background is launch a ton of money into middle America to be chipping away more at his base, because you need those uber conservative and some of even those more moderate Republicans to feel more comfortable to vote against him in an impeachment. Do both of those two things at once, and then this will all fix itself. But right now, the jury is completely tainted. You have to continue to start getting more people to start disagree with Trump and feel that his economic
I agree with
wrong.
that. We have to be working the jury pool now. We have to be changing the message we have. But I think it's moving that direction. But there's a hard line of 30% or 35% who's not ever going to believe that Trump did anything wrong, and that 35% is going to be dangerous. I think we can talk about that on another show. And just to finish up the 2020 discussion, I think, like I said, Jerry Brown would be my ideal candidate. Not just candidate, but if I could just.
Are you just going to?
I thought you were saying it. Did you not give your?
I think you already went.
No, because Michael.
He had more to pontificate.
Michael interrupted me. But that's okay.
Well, by all means, Rick, please give me your ideal candidates for the 2020 election.
So to finish up and to make my point here is that I can't remember exactly where I left off to talk about Gillibrand. I love Castro, but at the end of the day, this guy has to be stopped. And I have to get in the mindset that he's going to run again and could potentially win again. That has to be the mindset. If something happens that derails that, that's wonderful. But we have to think that way, because that's the only way we're going to win. We have to fight that reality, okay? And I think someone like Joe Biden might be the case. And we'll see. I might sing a different tune in a year and a half. But and my reasons for this are because he's old school. There's obviously no doubt about that. He's an old school Democrat. He was the vice president under Obama, who's a very popular president, I might add. The thing about Joe is that Joe has an uncanny ability to connect. And we need someone out there that really can connect. And he can go to his home state of Pennsylvania and he can talk. And I also have to picture in my head the debates, right? Even though Hillary won all three, dominated two of them, and still won the third one as well. Actually, it was more the middle one. That was the one she was a little off in, but she won all three of them decisively, and she still lost the election. But we need someone that can still stand there with him and basically do what she did, even a little better. And when I think about someone like Cory Booker, or I think about Castro, or I think about, whoever else you can throw at me, I have to start thinking in those terms. And I think about Joe Biden standing there and all that shit talking and double talk and BS that Trump does. And then just to have Joe look at him and go, what a bunch of malarkey. And, that kind of stuff, like we need that, it reminds me kind of Bush and Gore in 2000 and their debates. And Gore went off on this long tangent, and the camera came over and it was just all overwrought nonsense. And comes back to Bush, and he's sitting there. He's like, "Whew, that's gonna take me a minute to process that." And it was funny, and it was real, and it worked. It was a beautiful moment in a debate, and I didn't like him as president, but I got to give credit where credit is due. We have to have that to combat Trump.
Well, the only downside to Biden was always like that. We always said it was the gaffes, right? And now we're like, what's a gaffe anymore these days?
Oh my God! Oh my God! Do we not yearn for the days? I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, I want, what I want back, Mr. Romney. I'm so sorry for thinking you were so vile with the binders full of women, 47%. Like, I yearn for those days, man. Those are Hallmark cards to me now.
Corporations are people too. Yeah.
Yeah. No, so for me, like I said,
sweet.
Jerry Brown, if I could just put him right into the presidency, that would be great. I love Joe Biden. I think he would be a great candidate. I would happily vote for Joe Biden, but I think that historically the Democratic Party does not vote for or elect old people. It just doesn't. They're a party of a new message. They're a party of the new candidate. They're a party of young people. It just doesn't happen. For me, I think that the ideal ticket going into the general election in 2020 would be something like Jennifer Granholm at the top of the ticket, who's former governor of Michigan, and somebody like Gavin Newsom or Cory Booker in the vice presidency spot. I think it would be.
I like Gavin Newsom, but
I definitely can. I can definitely. Yeah, that's really interesting.
I love Gavin Newsom, but you're talking about age, and Bernie Sanders inspired millennials.
But
like
Bernie Sanders,
it's
the aberration. It's the exception that proves the rule. So I mean, we can talk about all kinds of different candidates, and we'll see what shakes out moving forward. And I'm a little bit excited and a little bit scared, but I think that we're moving very quickly towards the future, which is where I want to move now. I want to head over into our predictions, but before we do that, since we generally close out the show as we finish that, I want to really thank Blake Cooper Griffin for being our guest on the show today. You did a great job. Yeah, lots of great opinions and lots of fiery debate. I think that having you here and in contrast with some of our opinions it created a microcosm of some of the chaos that's actually happening within the Democratic Party right now, because you can see that there's all different ways of looking at these things,
and within my Twitter feed.
Well, and listen, and he and I are both the most passionate Hillary supporters on this panel, and we had our moments of disagreement about that's where we're at right now. It's hard.
I want to say there is one thing. I just want to be clear. We've had this whole debate, and it's like, and I see it online too, where people are like, Hillary, be more authentic. Be more authentic. She has a book and she says everything she says, and everybody's like, not now. I think it's not.
Well,
right.
I don't think it's what she says. I think it's how she says it. Like, even when you can hear her reading from her own book, it sounds inauthentic and robotic.
I look forward to reading the whole book.
Okay, so
maybe you'll have me back once we've all read the book.
I do as well. I think we should do a show on the book.
Absolutely.
I'm planning on getting it and reading
predictions.
it.
I've got one specific question for everybody, and then I want everybody to try and give a prediction of where they think the Progressive Party is going, or something specific that's going to happen within the Democratic Party within the next 6 to 18 months. So,
well, Jeremy, hold on. That sounds awesome. If you don't mind, just real quick for our guest, Blake, you have anything you just want to plug real fast? Just
sure. Well, I've got a movie coming out. Besides heading to iTunes and checking out Love Is All You Need, I've got a TV movie coming out called Before You Say I Do, where I play a nice guy, which is good. And I just did an episode of Preacher, so check that out on AMC. If you want to hear more of the same things that I just said, but retweeted out, you can follow me at The Grifster, TheGriffSter on Twitter, and at Blake Cooper Griffin on Instagram. I also have a Medium account where I write about my political leanings. You just search Blake Cooper Griffin.
Everybody, please go check that out. And we're looking forward to having Blake back on a future show as well. Blake, as the guest of honor, let's start with you. Do you think that the Democrats are going to be able to retake either house of Congress in 2018?
Optimistically, I do think that we could. I think that it will require a wave, and I think that we're probably more likely to take the House. That's my thought. I think just with the amount of Senate seats that are up for grabs, I don't know. It's going to be tough. I'm hoping for both.
Specific prediction
I think
about
that the
the
House
progressives moving forward?
Well, this is not just the progressives, but I do think, there was this thing with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, who masterfully played Donald Trump yesterday and got a deal with the debt ceiling. I think that you are going to see, my prediction is that you're going to see Donald Trump make more deals there to Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell's dismay.
And let me say something about that too. And I always said I will always give someone credit where credit is due. And I think yesterday was the one moment in his presidency so far where he can kind of say he accomplished something. I don't necessarily agree with you that he was played by them. I personally think, and I can't stand the SOB, but I think that he did that on purpose, and that was an FU to House leadership for the month of August. And Joe Scarborough said it best this morning, and he's a no fan of Trump either. But he's like, you know what? At the end of the day, make no mistake, Trump's a New Yorker. He's known these guys for years. He's donated money to them when he was a Democrat before he became a racist birther. He's more comfortable cutting a deal with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi behind closed doors than he is Mitch McConnell from Kentucky.
Oh God, he's doing this to soften the heart of liberals like you. Trust me, I had that same
Michael,
feeling.
hold on.
Well, maybe he's really come around. Oh, please.
Absolutely not. Hold on a minute. We're at a point where we can't just say that one little thing is positive, then we're hacks. That's ridiculous. My opinion of him doesn't change.
Yeah, I agree.
My opinion of him doesn't change because of this. It's okay to say he did that one little thing that I think was just a smart political move. He sucks. Every other category, everything he's did has been vile and disgusting, and he'll probably ruin this little token of goodwill by the end of the day through some racist tweet. Yes. All right, but it's okay. It's okay for us to say that was a good move.
I don't know that we'll never know his motivation. I'm happy for the win that we had, and I think that it may happen more. We'll see.
His motivation is he's a vindictive prick, and it doesn't matter what party you're with. He thinks you tried to cross him or you tried to go against him. He's sending the message like, I'll do whatever I want and I'll go back on you. Like that's just the way that he's wired.
Doesn't mean
right. Well, he might be just trying to spite Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, which I'm okay with.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I like it.
And what happens if he cuts a deal with Democrats and gets an immigration bill passed and passes immigration reform? He may very well do that, and he'll do something that Obama couldn't even do. And I'll
be very impressed. So
that could happen.
Prediction?
So my prediction is that Trump is going to run again in 2020, and as far as the midterms go, my prediction is that I think it's going to be a very long night for progressives and liberals. I think we're going to wake up and we're going to get a couple of seats here and there. I don't think it's going to be sweeping, and I think I'm hoping that if it's as bad as I think it's going to be, that maybe, just maybe, that'll be the catalyst for fire under everyone's ass for 2020. A real fire, not a faux fire, not a fake one, not a plastic one, like a real fire. That's what I hope.
So I guess my opinion, or what I know for a fact is, no, we are not taking back the House in 2018. I think that the Republicans, the conservative media machine, learned a lesson. They tested some things out, even if it was helped out by the Russians, that the best way to be able to win elections going forward, setting aside all the disadvantages that gerrymandering has created, is they will start focusing on what Blake was saying. They will try to be disillusioning liberals. They will try to get us not wanting to participate in the process because we'll be pissed off at the Democrats. And so you'll see social media, you'll see a lot of messaging all surrounded that. It's even started to, I've even started to see it now on some of the conservative blogs that I follow, as they're just kind of things about trying to piss off or try to put the Hillary and the Bernie people against each other again. That is how they're going to focus, is they're just going to try to divide us. And the Democrats, the Democratic leadership, I don't think they have the ability.
So I also don't think we're going to take back the House or the Senate in 2018. I think we're going to pick up seats in both and get a little bit closer. But I think that in part because of what Michael was saying, and in part because there's just too much gerrymandering. It's just too hard to win in some of those districts. Something could change unless something really happens with the Russia investigation or Trump really screws up in some other way. But other than that, I don't think that we are going to be able to take back either house. My prediction for the next 6 to 18 months is that as far as the progressives and the Democratic Party is concerned, things are going to get worse before they get better. The argument is going to get louder, and it's going to get messier, and it's going to help to fuel some of that Republican agenda for pitting, the left against one another. And that's going to be really, really ugly. Thanks a lot, everybody. That's our show.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of our Left Shew Politics podcast. You can find us on Twitter at Left Shew Politics. Follow the Facebook page at facebook.com/Left Shew Politics and the LSP website, leftshewpolitics.com. Search for our channel on YouTube, Stitcher, and Google Play.